Welcome back to a brand new edition of So You Think You Can Build. A brand new series that is completely original. Nobody in the Destiny community has ever done anything quite like this ever before. This is So You Think You Can Build. Today we're going to be looking at my new favorite Titan build, and this is your warning before watching. We're using exotic class items. It's not my fault they're broken and irritating to get a hold of, but like Tommy Wiseau says,
that's life.
Alright, let's get started on the build. When it comes to Prismatic, Titans really don't have what Hunters and Warlocks have, and you've probably seen the Consecration knockout combo before in like every other build for Titans. But that one combination is really insane, and this build takes full advantage of what it brings to the table. Now our exotic class item Stoicism has two perks. One of them is kind of the main focus of the build, and the other is there to basically complement what our first perk is doing. And that first perk is Spirit of Inmost Light. It's going to make one ability boost the recharge time of the other two abilities, and this stacks 2 times if we use 2 abilities one right after the other. Typically we only have 1 grenade charge and 1 melee charge, but our other perk, Spirit of Armamentarium, is going to give us another charge of our grenade, which in turn will boost our melee and class ability faster the more we spam our grenades. So with that being said, let's see how our subclass can help boost and take advantage of these perks. Now normally I'd start with our super and abilities and do aspects later, but this build is really focused on our main aspect, which is Consecration. While you have a powered melee charge, you can slide and activate that melee ability, turning it into this massive hammer that slams and ignites targets. Spirit of Inmost Light helps us get back those melee charges extremely quickly, so we can end up using Consecration back to back a large majority of the time. This aspect is so good for taking out waves of enemies and has the ability to one-shot champions. Our second aspect is Knockout. Since this build is melee focused, Knockout is going to make us amplified when we use our melees and restores a portion of our health. It also increases our melee range and damage while Knockout is active. Now because we're using Consecration, the melee I've gone with is Frenzied Blade. Probably the most important reason for picking this is because it can hold up to 3 charges, which means we get 3 Consecration slams. Every time we use this too, Spirit of Inmost Light will quickly recharge our grenade and class ability, so if we run out of charges, we can throw grenades and use our class ability to get back our melee extremely fast. For our grenade, I chose Shackle Grenade. Its ability to suspend targets, keeping them still while we use our Consecration slams, is amazing for making sure it hits and ignites those targets. It does have a slightly longer cooldown than the other grenades for Prismatic, so if you'd rather go with, say, the Pulse Grenade or Glacier Grenade, that works too. Our class ability is Thruster for a few reasons. It has the lowest cooldown of any class ability, so we can use it sooner, which pairs with Spirit of Inmost Light, regenerating grenade and melee ability. It's also good for spacing from enemies and gives us more room to activate Consecration, which needs a running start to activate. For the super, I've gone with Twilight Arsenal, which just recently got a buff, so it'll be doing 20% more damage to bosses and mini-bosses. Additionally, it spawns 3 axes for you and your teammates to hit targets with or throw around the room. Honestly, the super you choose for this build doesn't really affect too much the goal of the build, so it's mainly pick your favorite. For fragments, let's start with Facet of Sacrifice. While we have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. Our aspect Knockout is going to make us amplified, so whenever our Shackle Grenade deals damage, our Transcendence energy from that is increased. Facet of Protection is just one of those fragments you see in every Prismatic build. While you're surrounded, it makes us more resistant to damage, and while Transcendent, that effect is increased. Facet of Ruin is going to increase the size and damage of our solar ignitions, which goes really well with Consecration since it ignites targets on impact. Facet of Grace makes kinetic weapons give us more transcendent energy, and defeating targets with our super grants us bonus transcendence energy. Now, kinetic weapons aren't light or dark, so they give us both light and dark transcendence energy, and I'll get more into that when we start looking at our weapons for the build. Lastly, Facet of Courage is going to make our Arc, Solar, and Void abilities do increased damage to targets affected by Darkness debuffs. The Suspend from our Shackle Grenade counts as a Darkness debuff, so when we activate Consecration, our Strand melee turns into a Solar melee, therefore making targets suspended take even more damage from our Consecration slams. Now for the weapons, in the kinetic slot we have Witherhoard. It's always been such a powerful weapon for taking out red bar enemies and doing damage over time, but with Facet of Grace it's going to give us extra light and dark transcendent energy and makes going transcendent so easy. There's often been times where I get all my transcendent energy back within a minute just by spamming abilities and using Witherhoard to boost the light and dark energy, so I can't recommend this weapon enough. Next is Courageon, the new pulse rifle from Echoes Act 2. It's one of the new heavy burst frames, so it does more damage than other pulse rifles and shoots a 2-round burst. I have mine with Enlightened Action and Volt Shot, which is nice for ad clearing, but honestly, if you have something you'd rather run instead, it won't make that much of a difference. In the heavy slot, I'm using Edge Transit with Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. It's one of the best DPS options out there, but again, it's not going to affect the build too much, so run whatever you feel most comfortable. On our helmet, I have one copy of Powerful Friends, which is great whenever you're doing missions with a fire team and boosts their armor charge when you pick up an Orb of Power. Kinetic Siphon, so when Witherhoard takes out a group of enemies, you spawn an Orb of Power. And Hands-On, so we get more super energy every time we use our Consecration melee. On the arms, I have Impact Induction, so whenever we use our melee, we get more grenade energy. I also have Momentum Transfer, so when we use our grenade, we get more melee energy. Running both of these alongside Spirit of Inmost Light is just a great option of getting your abilities back even faster. I also have a copy of Heavy Handed because we're spamming Consecration slams and this will make them spawn Orbs of Power. Our chest piece has 2 resistance mods, which should change with the threat of the activity you're doing. I also have Void Reserve, so we have more ammo for our Edge Transit. For the legs, I have a copy of Recuperation to give us health every time we pick up an Orb of Power. One copy of Invigoration, so when we pick up an Orb of Power, we get more melee energy. And a copy of Kinetic Weapon Surge, so we get more damage from using our Witherhoard. Finally, on our class item, we have 2 copies of Outreach for even more melee ability when we use our class ability, and 1 copy of Reaper to make an Orb of Power whenever we use our class ability. Looking at our artifact, Radiant Orbs is going to make us radiant every time we get an Orb of Power, making our weapons have anti-barrier and deal more damage while Radiant is active. Our Aspect Knockout is going to make us amplified almost all the time, so Galvanic Armor is going to make us more resistant to damage whenever that buff is active. Solar Fulmination helps buff our Consecration slams even more by doing increased damage in an increased radius. Shield Crush is great for making our grenade ability recharge faster when we are radiant or amplified. And Transference is going to make our grenade and melee abilities do more damage while we're transcendent. Additionally, Weapon Final Blows while transcendent refund light and dark energy after transcendence ends. Lastly, I know that finding the right rolls on these exotic class items can be really difficult and infuriating, and while Spirit of Inmost Light is the most irreplaceable perk on here, Spirit of Armamentarium could be replaced. I just like having another grenade for more ways to get back our melee charges. Other perks I'd recommend in this slot would be Spirit of Syntheseps, Spirit of Contact, and Spirit of Star Eater isn't a bad option either, considering it would buff our super tremendously. As always, thank you for watching, and if you want to support the channel, please consider liking this video and subscribing. I placed a Mobalytics link in the description if you want to take a look at the build there as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.